I would like to welcome everyone to the Roxboro Roundtables. My name is Jessica Putman, and I am the student coordinator for the tables. Today our topic is exactly how much control does a school has over your civil rights? And our host today will be Lauren Jabe.
Hello, my name is Lauren Jabe, and I am a senior law society major. One of the focuses of my First Amendment senior seminar paper was on exactly how much control should a school have over its students, and how much, reciprocally, how much control should a student expect the schools to have in basically taking care of them. Should we go around the
Sure. Hi, I'm Dean Tinsley. I'm a fifth-year landscape architecture student.
Evan Lane, Director of the Law Society.
And I'm Mark Devoni. I'm the Dean of Students at Philadelphia University.
So the first thing I wanted to do was basically let everyone know that what we talk about here is obviously not going to apply to Philadelphia University. Philadelphia University is a private school and does not fall under the precedence of these court cases that we'll be discussing. These court cases were decided on the First Amendment, and the First Amendment really only applies to public schools such as Penn State, because only public schools trying to find the word. Yeah, the state action that comes with them. So I also wanted to say that when we go into hypotheticals, just to make sure that we're not talking about any school specifically, unless it's specifically stated that it is that school, that we'll be talking about a fake state. It's called Midlands, and their state university, so Midlands State University, and all jurisdictions of courts and laws would apply in this fake state, so that there's no one's being left out. I'd then like to start with a hypothetical in Midlands, where a student named Andy Lee has been drinking at a fraternity party and has decided to walk home to her dorm. She falls down a hill while walking home and subsequently has a hematoma from that fall. Now, who should be responsible for the care of that student? Should it be the student himself, or should the school be responsible?
So I have some questions on the hypothetical. She was drinking at a fraternity?
Yes.
And the fraternity is off campus?
Yes.
Okay. Did the fraternity have to do anything in order to get sanctioned to be a party by the university?
Yes, the fraternity had to fill out a form that was then submitted to a student activities office.
Did they have to indicate to get certification if they had security to make sure that no underage drinking would occur?
Yes.
And the university also say that they would police this or randomly check different parties to make sure that's being done?
Yes, they did.
Okay. All right. With those facts in mind, is the university responsible for this girl who underage drinks at a fraternity that didn't have a security officer there, that didn't fulfill what they said they were going to fulfill for the university, and the university never came to check to see if they were fulfilling what they meant to do, or what they promised to do? So, I think, just for the sake of argument too, I will many times during this conversation give opinions that are not my own, but it's for the sake of argument, so I'm not owning any opinion, I'm putting them out for arguments. But Jess, you want to start?
Is she underage?
Yes, she is over 18 but under 21.
Okay, and then I have one more question. All right, so walking from the fraternity house to, I guess, her dorm, was she walking on like a marked path, or was she walking like through a shortcut style?
She
or
was walking through a path that was student created. It did not have lights. It was not paved, and the other students have seen it as a sort of dangerous trail, but others have still taken it.
Because she was drunk, she thought.
Right. I don't know. I mean, I kind of want to say like the school is responsible because they did initially take responsibility by having these guidelines saying that they would check in on the parties, but at the same time, it's kind of like it's not an actual path. She just kind of took it on her own, basically.
She's drunk because she's making bad
Right,
decisions.
but she's at the party.
Right.
So I
it's
mean,
the school's responsibility to make sure that their students make good decisions. If they are adults, you know, do you need the school telling you to do anything else? You know, should the school be saying, hey, you know, you should be eating your veggies. You really should eat that cauliflower for lunch today.
oh,
You know, at what point is it your life versus the school's life that's being dictated for you?
I have a lot to say, which, first of all, just for clarity, this is not a First Amendment issue. It's a liability issue.
We'll be getting to the First Amendment.
Yeah. So there have been probably hundreds of incidents of this type, some of which have been brought into court for both public and private schools. And here are a few of the principles that I've learned over time as being a dean of students for over 30 years. Because we are not in an in loco parentis relationship with our students, meaning acting in lieu of parents, as colleges and universities purported to be in the 50s and 60s, before the world turned in a different direction. We do not have parental responsibility for students. The simplest way of saying this is that when they turn 18, and even as under 18 students, we have a whole bunch of qualifications for that, they're treated as emancipated adults, consequently responsible for their own decisions. So that's the big line, that students, all colleges and universities have issues related to alcohol consumption, on or off campus. And we can get into how far the jurisdiction of the college goes. But for argument's sake, given that you've defined this as off campus and clearly affiliated with the university, but not owned and operated by the university, many important principles there. Effectively, this student chose to drink, even though there are probably policies on the books that it is students are prohibited from drinking if under the age of 21. In other words, almost all colleges have a statute in their student handbook that says students are responsible for obeying the laws of the state. And every single state in the union requires students to be 21, requires all citizens to be 21 or older from drinking. There are no states that allow, by law, students to drink under 21. The last was Louisiana in 1993. So in the 70s and 80s, there were all sorts of variations in drinking laws and policies. Those were all swept away by the early 90s on threat of the federal government to withdraw funding for state highway funds. This happened during the Reagan administration. So getting back to the real point, did the student herself choose to drink? And it appears that she was, whether she may have been coerced, it may have been a drinking ritual related to some hazing stuff with the fraternity. But because this is not on college campus, but it's related, there's a trail going there. And because the college does not have the responsibility to oversee their students to the extent that they can guarantee that someone wouldn't drink or drink to excess. The question is, did the college create what's called a special duty that effectively we promise something that we would then have to deliver on? In other words, did we create a contract with a student that, quote, guaranteed her safety? And if so, what's in the contract? So if we, for instance, were saying that the university, Midland, wherever, said that we would send someone there to ensure the safety, access to the event, what did we exactly say that would have put us in the position of creating what's called in the legal terms a duty to care, a liability that we promised to do that we failed to do. So a party contract might imply that. There's so many details on your way to the final answer about whether the college was liable or responsible for. But we start with the students responsible for their own behavior. Secondly, the agency that created the event would be in the line of liability and responsibility. And thirdly, of course, what is the relationship of the university to this? And what did the university say it would do that it didn't do? Because when we write a student handbook or policies, we create a contractual obligation with our students within the vast range of possibilities of human behavior. So if we created, for instance, if we had a chemistry lab and we had no safeguards against the possibility of an accident related to using chemicals that could hurt somebody, we could, of course, be liable because there was no fire extinguisher, because we didn't train students on how to use chemicals. So in virtually every circumstance of creating an educational program, we have a duty that comes implied or explicit with that particular program. In this case, as you fan this out into the broad world, if you were to say, well, she was on campus, she pre-gamed in her dorm room, walked off campus, was going to Manioc with a false ID, drank there, walked back to campus and got hit by a bus. What would be the trail of responsibility to back to the point where she was drinking in her dorm room with 3 other people, all underage, pre-gaming and drinking a half a bottle of vodka each. So it's all in the details, but the real line of demarcation is whether or not the university is responsible for its students, and if so, what have we articulated to be our responsibilities. And of course, there's liability and culpability, negligence, other types of things that come into play here. Should we have known? Did we know? Did we sanction? All different nuances to the issue of whether or not this particular student was in the care of the university and we failed to meet our obligation to her.
I just want to add to that. I think there's something else to be considered in the argument. Universities, whether state or private or businesses, attracting customers. And party schools and having fun at schools is something that's even advertised out there. I forgot what magazine it is, but they rate who's the #1 party school. They actually rate who they are. And perversely, that attracts customers. Students who go, I want to go to Penn State. It's always ranking in the top 5. There's going to be a good time there. I'm going to go. There's going to be parties. And it brings in customers. Often the school is caught in the middle of that. And if they know that students are coming to that university because of its party reputation, and they're taking advantage of that by having more students in other schools who actually crack down and there aren't parties all the time, shouldn't those universities that don't do enough in order to keep that reputation different be punished in the end? Because they're profiting by their bad reputation. So the universities that do the right thing, because that's the right thing, are losing money. So wouldn't that be public policy to make these party schools responsible for what actually happens to these students?
Would you like me to answer here or respond?
Yeah, you can respond.
Okay. I think you hit on a number of really vital cases. I often say to people, students do things at colleges they may not ever do because we've created a social contract for them to do it. What an idea. Get 3,000, 5,000, 15,000, 20,000 young adults all in one place, see what happens. The argument might be, as Professor Lane points out, wow, here you are with this great mass appeal. Of course, does Penn State itself market itself as a party school, or is it just judged by magazine X or Y to be the coolest part of school.
Right.
You know, Penn State has football games. Does it have tailgating? Where is the tailgating? Does it promote? Does it sell the alcohol? Do they? But so there are many, many nuances to this. But I think with students coming to the university, we do have a responsibility to them. The question is, where does it end regarding self-responsibility to obey laws, use good judgment? If you go out and get liquor that isn't yours to buy and you consume it at a vast rate, we start there. But if we create these party scenes, block parties, fraternity row, and so on, what is our obligation? And one of the keys to counteracting these activities is education and prevention programs. So if the university were to say, well, it's not our business, you know, it's just like, whatever, you know, it's a free-for-all. Everybody makes their own decisions. I've actually worked at a college like that. And many colleges were much like that in the 70s and 80s when the freedom to express yourself out of the in loco parentis construct, people ran amok. There were all sorts of problems with this kind of thing. Drugs, alcohol. We could go into the world of Title IX and sexual assault, which I'm the Title IX coordinator here, so I can speak to that. And these issues come up quite readily. What were we doing? What did we know? When did we know it? And what did we do with students as a preventative measure and educational measure to teach them the consequences of drinking, the safe practices that need to be taken?
Here's the interesting thing. You started it off, and we'll go to other students here, that we're no longer in the locus parentis.
Well, actually, I wanted to speak on that.
Go ahead.
So, in 2007, Gavin Henning wrote an article called "Is in Consortia Cum Parentibus the New In Loco Parentis?" So, as you mentioned before, in loco parentis means in place of parent. That is a historical thing that goes all the way back to England, where fathers would send their sons off and they would expect that their kids would be disciplined the same way that they would be at home. However, in this new age of kids wanting to express themselves, but parents still saying, "You need to take care of my child," this new idea has come around where we as students are still responsible for our decisions, but it's still the responsibility of the school to make sure that we don't mess up to a point where it's irreversible.
Right. Well, there's no doubt the pendulum has swung from total control of students, where a dean of students could call on a student and say, "What were you doing out there?" "Well, I was having a beer." "Boom, you're out of here." Or, "What were you doing here?" "You were dancing, and we prohibit dancing." "Boom, you're out of there." Or any number of things that would be protected under law, under the Constitution. So colleges make up all sorts of rules, from Bob Jones University to Antioch College, probably identified as the most liberal private school in the country. But, so in loco parentis was strangling people, there's no doubt about that, and it was impossible to enforce. So the pendulum swung toward what's known as a contract relationship between the organization and its students. And there has been a swing back, 2007, and I've been in the business over these decades to know that parental expectations, and I hear it a lot, you need to take care of my children. What are you doing to take care of my child? Particularly on the issue of safety. So heavy drinking and social contracts which encourage heavy drinking without being attended to could arguably be an irresponsible feature of the university that compromises the safety of my son and the safety of all students. So in the Scott Kohler case, an MIT freshman who drank himself to death on the second weekend of the semester, he became the poster child for this massive issue. I think this was in 2006, that despite the best efforts of the university, MIT, or maybe the not so best efforts of MIT, Scott Kohler, valedictorian of his class in May, and was dead by September. And that became a huge cause célèbre in higher ed. And there are many, many, many other cases like this. But that became a national cause célèbre. Because lots of irresponsible students at Penn State drank themselves into oblivion, how many valedictorians at MIT do that? Not as many, and they generally don't die. But he did die, and it shook the timbers of higher education and all the liability issues. And MIT, of course, was sued over the issue. And I think the strange legal workings of this ended up, and not particularly in regard to, say, the law of drinking, but laws in Massachusetts which govern something that became a pretext to sue MIT. And so the stories go, college after college after college, particularly in student death, particularly in what might be construed as preventable activity or foreseeability. Could MIT foresee this? For instance, why have freshmen go rush residence hall, rush fraternities, when they hardly know where to get around the block? They're going over to this place which is very loosely regulated. There are hazing laws on the state books, hazing requirements on rules and regulations of the student conduct code. But we all know that rush might involve a drinking game or some stupid ass plan to go walk over to the quarry when everybody's drunk, which happened just last year at Cornell or someplace like it. So the real question is, practically speaking, where's the middle ground here between in loco parentis, impossible to really do anything with, abandoned as a legal principle, to pure contract, students as customers, and they're all on their own. So what's the middle ground? Because ultimately, whether this is illegal, it definitely is going to see the light of day with civil action. Colleges are going to be sued by people who feel that they did not hold up their end of the responsibility.
Well, actually, I was about to.
Oh no, I would like to do what you.
Oh, okay. There was a civil case. This does not have to do with drinking, so we're going to switch gears a little bit. And as you said, you should go back to the First Amendment. Back in, I forget the year, Hazelwood v. Kuhlmeyer, very big case for in loco parentis, where high school students were basically told, we can censor your newspaper articles because we have to make sure that it is appropriate for students of the educational community to read it. You need to learn what we're setting out, and also that the school is not being erroneously attributed as the court ruled or stated. So in high school, or in which college was it?
Hazelwood is a school district, public high school.
Yes. Governor State University, there we go. In Governor State University, that court case, a high school court case, was used to basically say that the same thing applies in colleges. Okay. That college newspapers, as long as they are making sure that it concerns pedagogical, there we go, pedagogical concerns, that they can then be censored. Now, this is something completely different with the drinking. Everyone can say that drinking underage is illegal, but at what point do the students actually have free speech?
I'll answer it because you're looking at me.
No, I'm just really interested.
So let me clarify some of my background.
Before we go together, I just want to know what the students' impressions are on, because we have active once again the digital voice paper, which is very active now. I recently sent it out. There's articles on all kinds of things.
I would just like to say first that the digital voice does not fall under the framework that was implied by Hosty and Hazelwood, because both deal with funding, essentially killing the paper by defunding it, whereas the voice is not funded.
In true Philly tradition, we are unfunded.
Knock yourself out.
Do what you want.
I'm interested in what the students think here as to if there should or if there are any limits in a student-run newspaper, and assuming that we're state university for the moment.
Can I ask a question first?
Right. Yeah.
I got a question first. Okay, so for both instances, so for the high school, it had to be reviewed by the school itself or like
The
peer reviewed?
principal of the school. Well, it was part of a journalism class.
Okay.
They this is basically a project.
Mhm.
2 articles were deemed inappropriate. One was on teenage pregnancy, which used current students' experiences going through teenage pregnancy, and then the other was on the effect of divorce on high school students.
Okay.
So the first article, they were saying that it includes some graphic things that they said that freshmen should not have been subject to reading, and that the second one, the parents of that were actually in the divorce proceedings did not get to comment. So it's basically they were hearing what the students had to say about the divorce, but not that wasn't necessarily the truth.
Okay.
So because of that, they had to delete 2 whole pages. They were on 2 separate pages, and they didn't have time to rework it. So the kids, Kuhlmeyer and all the rest that were involved in the lawsuit, their articles were cut because they were on those 2 pages. So they're saying, when I don't have free speech because these 2 kids don't, and then
So this is a matter of censorship.
yes.
Up to and including the possibility that the paper itself could be retired
Yes.
because the students didn't fulfill their obligation to the school in the opinion of the head of the school.
Mm-hmm.
It could be those topics or some other taboo topic that the school killed the newspaper and prevented them from those articles being printed. Is that?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. I just was confused. I didn't know if it was like they had to be reviewed by like higher up or if it was just
Yes.
like
The principal of the school had ultimate say and said that those 2 had to be cut.
Yeah,
Oh.
sort of executive authority.
Yes.
oh,
So probably in the educational construct, since it's in a class.
Right, that's a different situation.
Yes.
So let's look at a newspaper like ours, a student-run newspaper that's put out. Should there, but it's a university, for university students, for them to read. Should there be limits on what is said in it, or should there be full First Amendment like any other newspaper would be?
I want to say full First Amendment rights because I know if you start cutting First Amendment rights, then you're on like a slippery slope and anyone can say like this is offensive, we can't publish this or something like that. But at the same time, I can understand some people can be like really like vulgar with their writing to the point where it's like there's no point in even publishing it. Like it's not really like a actual article, I guess I would say. Like
to decide though.
What do you mean?
Who is anyone to decide what someone else's journalistic prose counts as acceptable or not?
yeah, but I'm just thinking of like a school newspaper. I mean, if you're publishing it as like an actual like supposed to be like an actual newspaper type thing, then I mean, even if you go work for a newspaper company, like your boss has final say on it anyway. If they don't want it.
Private.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just thinking on like just simply like if somebody wrote an article about I can't
Offensive
think.
to women, saying if we were doing a Title IX
Yeah.
situation, saying something like women drink too much at parties and what happens to them afterwards is
Is
their
their
own
fault.
fault.
And I-
Okay, which I'm sure.
Yeah.
You're presenting an argument.
Right, presenting an argument. It's an argument whether you agree with it or not, and you would, in the outside world, be entitled to write an opinion piece on that and put that in the newspaper,
Yeah.
and the government could not censor it. But could you do that, or should you do that? Because the dean has used in the past with me the concept of safe place. So
Yes.
how does
So,
that apply?
I think the professor is doing his best to make me lead into this conversation.
How I succeed?
Yes, and I think I'm doing my best to hold back because I don't necessarily agree with the hypothetical that was posed to me, nor do I agree with the phrasing of your choice, the journalistic prose of what is deemed acceptable and what is not, because I think we've already grasped what is acceptable and what is not in a society that concerns itself with civility. So My argument for what happened last week at the roundtable. What was last week?
It was Leslie. Why don't you give some background?
Okay, so
Oh, the bombing.
because it's not in the roundtable.
Yeah, I worked 3 jobs, so like the concept of time, or at least how much time is spent on something, is just like is elusive to me now. So last week we were at a roundtable about the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and a gentleman who was a Army veteran. He served in the Korean War. Yes. No, I thought it was
The Korean Vietnam.
Okay, both of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
I misunderstood them. I apologize. The gentleman used a slur for the Japanese people. He said
Whatever.
Yes, he used it in sentence and in context. Now, my professor, who was sitting next to me, not Evan Lane, but Professor Kimmelman, asked me not to speak out because I think it was in my best action, actually, not to speak out against what he said in front of the room full of students that were there, because I don't think it would have been a pretty sight or an educational one for anyone involved or the gentleman himself. But I later on that evening sent Professor Lane an email concerning the safer space of students, and basically within that email I said that the usage of slurs in any space does not constitute itself to safe space for educational or institutional learning in any sort. We cannot learn anything from slurs. we have known that they are dehumanizing acts physically, psychologically, and lead to further physical harm. That's the end of it. That's the end spectrum. That is the end. And we saw that in the usage of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs. So, furthering a former or last week argument, rather, I would like you to Yes, Lauren. Sorry, thank you. We got to use names.
Yeah.
I would like you, Lauren, to go on and create a scenario where you, I, and the dean, and just everyone else in the room could like really go back and forth. Because like with the two arguments with the two ones that you put in, I think that those articles should have been in there. The divorce and the other one, the teen pregnancy. I think those are necessary.
Before the divorce one, I can only understand it if the parents said something. Like if the kids were like,
They were never contacted. The student writer never made contact with the parents.
well, not in the sense of the parents' voice in the article, but if the child that they talked to were given information that for a parent it's not something you want other parents to know. You know what I'm saying?
Violation of privacy.
Yeah.
That's a different.
But yeah, but that's the only thing I was.
Yeah.
The first article about the teen pregnancy, I didn't see anything wrong with it. But the other one, I could just picture in my head the parents being angry with that.
Yeah,
But
example, I think that's exactly where Dean was leading. I think it would be a good argument.
Because I think that's where my opinion would be best.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, earlier in the year, a student group at Yale University has sent out an email basically saying, please look at your
costume.
yes, for Halloween, and make sure that you're not appropriating cultures and you're not demeaning anyone, whether you intend to or not. And then a professor had responded to the email, sending it to the student body, basically saying, you are adults, you should know how to do this, and if you it's your choice if you want to wear something that is offensive or appropriative. That is your decision, and you shouldn't be told what to do by anybody else.
And the response to that letter was what?
Mm-hmm.
What did the student body?
Then the students want to get rid of the
Student body was like,
Yeah.
yeah. And like,
Well, the careful with the student body of those students.
Oh yeah.
The reaction to the independent, private comment made public by a university employee who was a teaching faculty member part-time and an associate residence director. Yale's residential colleges have very high-level people living in residence to assist students. A lot of them.
That's actually another break off from the local forensics set.
Yeah, it's an interesting social structure. I know I applied for one of those jobs. I got to look at it firsthand. So she spoke out as a citizen of Yale against the university, who was sending out reminders that we should all be sensitive to everybody else and don't be stupid about this. And the backlash was formidable, and so much so that she eventually quit teaching. A very gifted teacher, but no longer teaches there. She did keep her job in residence, and her husband, who was the actual dean of the residential college, took to the public forum and met with students. There's a very famous YouTube video of a student getting up in his face and screaming at him at the top of her lungs, accusing him of being racist and disgusting. And it appeared to me from watching this YouTube that he was attempting to have dialogue about this kind of stuff. On the one hand, people were saying, careful, microaggressions. You dress up like in blackface, which would be a classic stupid blunder that has been done 100 times. That might be offensive, so before you put on your costume, maybe you're looking like a zombie, maybe you're looking at Little Black Sambo. Someone may take issue at that, and it can be hurtful. So the university was in an educational mode. She said, do we need Daddy to tell us what to wear, what to do on Halloween? In fact, it's such a radical holiday. It's meant to be anti-establishment. It's meant to have pranks. It's meant to be done with kind of an antic attitude. And if you do that, you could cross over a line, sure. And she wasn't really debating that someone might offend someone else, but that it wasn't the university's position to continue to prescribe student behavior. When she went out there, then it blew up in her face and became a very, very divisive issue around campus, among others. So what to do? I think my interpretation, and I was sympathetic to her, was that she was just trying to raise a point of principle that the university should be telling the students what to do, and this was then an invitation to interpret her comments as it's okay to dress up in racially offensive, or go with a noose around your neck and make believe you're a lynching subject. So there's a gazillion possibilities for offensive behavior on Halloween and offensive behavior in the world. And she was saying, well, we need to take risks and not be censured and use good judgment. Everything should be based on a person's sense of what's appropriate. Cross the line, it's your responsibility. As opposed to Yale told me not to do it. I think that's the way. Is that the way you understood
No. I read the email that was sent out by the dean who sent the email to the student populace, and then I read her counter argument to that, and I read it as I didn't necessarily read it as an argumentative feel to say, well, do we need Big Brother telling us to not come down and say don't be appropriative, don't be racist, don't be a slew of other things. And at first that was how it felt, but then she got into an entirely different. Then she got into an entirely different argument that became very what was that? It became very against respectability politics. It became an argument that was very tone policing. It became an argument that was very condescending to the student population. And then I think that's what kind of started all of this, and the professor. And I think there was a lot more things leading up to it. The reason why they sent it out was because there was the series of, I wouldn't say series, more like one or two acts of intolerance on campus that were directed towards the black student population there as a result of the Black Lives Matter Yale group that is on campus holding daily protests.
So there's a history there.
Yeah, so there's a history, and that was the reason why they sent it out, because the Black Lives Matter student group asked the dean who sent out the email to either have a statement prepared for Halloween because the black student, I keep misconstruing the names of them. The black students asked for that email, and they also, it was either you get the email or you because we know that there's going to be something happening because of what has happened to us already, or at least what has been directed to us. So that was the pretext for that. But then when she sent the email as a author and a child psychologist, for her to send things that were almost dismissive of the plight of the university and the black students who she's in the house, who she lives with her husband in the residence with, was just condescending and all out. It was wrong. I'm kind of at a loss for words for that. I've read that article for and against both of what was said, and they both, the ones that are for pretty much are tone policing, respectability politics, and condescension towards students of colors and their microaggressions, and like the existing line of how institutions want to like completely whitewash and erase like the importance of students of color in educational and institutional spaces in general. And just for the sake of this argument, I think it should be well known that the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and like all of the other all of the other articles that were written for the United States to become the body or the empire that it is today never had concerns for people who look like me or people who look like Jess. So I think that also needs to be taken into account, because this was the Bill of Rights was written for wealthy white middle-aged men who wanted to own property and like erase the Native Americans from this land. So that's another perspective.
Let me ask you a question, because this is the way I've looked at it. I'm interested, not whether it's my opinion, but how I've seen people argue. When you don't allow people to express what they are, often you get people suppressing who they truly are. The Westboro Baptist Church, I don't know, are you familiar with them? They're crazy. They're the group who goes around and at funerals, and they hold up signs saying God hates. And they're about as awful as you can be. And the pictures they show and the things they say, our soldiers who have given their lives, they're harassing their families with these terrible things. When people see them, they're expressing truly who they are. Okay, no hiding it. So we know who they are. So A, we know who to look out for. Okay, seriously.
That was another thing.
And B, when they express it, and you and I hear about, we all went, when we heard it, we in the marketplace of ideas, we reject it. And ideas put out, we go, that's foul. And we reject it. And now they're a joke. And that's how they're referred to. And I think the gay community almost thanks them for existing, because they're so awful that it's people who may have been on the line, never thought of gay rights or whatever it may be, look and go, well, I don't want to be like those people because they're awful, and they maybe reform their opinions to be more open-minded because the other side of it is so ugly. The problem you may have in suppressing people and what they do is that hides what they are.
Intentions.
Exactly. And it prevents a true marketplace, and instead the marketplace is not true. And that, to me, can be a problem. Jess wants to respond, and we'll go to go.
Okay. So with the whole Halloween thing, the more I think about it, the more, and how you was talking about like suppression and stuff of that nature, I think you should allow them to dress how they want to dress. Only because it does give that chance to openly have a discussion with people, because some people just don't truly understand what they're doing, while others know what they're doing it on purpose. But you can actually see, like, let's say a whole group dressed up as blackface. Let's say out of the group, 2 of them did it just because their friends are doing it. They don't really understand the whole context behind it.
Right.
But the other 3, they knew what they were doing. They were doing it to be
perfect.
Yeah. Well, you can now determine that, okay, these 3 people are clearly racist. You want nothing to do with them, where you would never have known unless you actually have a conversation with them, which you might never had. And the other 2 people, you can have that dialogue with them to understand, like, hey, what you did was hurtful, what you did was wrong. You shouldn't dress up in blackface because this, that, and the third, and actually have a conversation. Having the conversations with people about, like, things that are hurtful, whether it be racial, socioeconomic, gender, whatever it may be, it leads to more opening and understanding, I kind of want to say, because the more you talk about it, the more people can understand, especially when you do storytelling, how we always talk about the more times you tell stories about your situations versus just saying, I hate this, I don't like this, you have more opportunity to reach to like the emotional side of somebody to actually make them be like, oh wait, this is really messed up what I've been doing. Let me check myself, realize, let me listen to these people and actually hear what they're actually saying instead of just being ignorant and trying to shelter myself from them. So I mean, there is a downside because you are being hurtful. And at the same time, you always have that, you get an opportunity for a dialogue.
This is the rock and hard place on what in the great debate between political correctness on the one hand, which was really what the woman who wrote the email was addressing. Are we being so politically correct that the university is creating its own set of guidelines for human behavior or speech, which of course every single university in the public sector has ever tried to write a speech code or anything like that. They've all been thrown out of court. University of Michigan did it, Wisconsin did it, and those laws of restricting free speech, according to the First Amendment, have been struck down. I know because I've written a few speech codes on the principle of civility. Or you could go to the issues of microaggressions or whatever. So in the public sector, the First Amendment has enormous power in preventing people from prescribing what you can say and what you can do. In the private sector, we use a principle called time, place, and manner. And that means, is it appropriate for you to scream in the middle of a classroom? No. It's the time, place, manner would probably be objectionable, and there are hundreds of other situations where if you were in a basketball game, you could scream it out. If you're in a classroom, probably not. And so it goes. If you want to protest, is it an appropriate time, place, and manner to do so? And you saw at the University of Missouri, among many other campuses, students were crossing boundaries all over the place. Football teams were protesting. Presidents were resigning or asked to resign, and so on. So on the issues of race matters, and so on, this is a hot topic. Lots of people have different points of view, and it's very muddled in terms of what people can say versus what they can't say. But it's getting said, people are doing things, the university has to sort through it to say what's allowable, what's acceptable, even if it's offensive. And I think in the Yale case, there had been a history of these activities at Halloween parties and around campus, and there was an appeal to be aware that what you're doing matters and could be hurtful. And then someone found that objectionable, and then the battle ensued. But Yale was not, I think, as an institution, trying to prescribe behavior so much as be mindful, the teachable moment kind of thing. And one other thing
I'd just be interested with, because I addressed the questions directly to you, and I just wanted to see how you would respond to that argument. And also with Jesse, sort of summed it up pretty well. So, how would you respond to that? It's better to know who your enemies are. It's better to know and reject rather than have them hide.
Yeah.
And so
like
what
be your
Jesse
friend.
added to it is that we have 10 people who are acting like idiots. Maybe 8 of them are racist and they're no good and you're never going to change them, but 2 of them maybe just be stupid and not know, and gives you the opportunity to change them, teach them, make them more open-minded. If you forbid offensive behavior, you're not going to know. People hide. And the hiding is more dangerous than anything else. That's, and I was interested how, and of course what's going to happen is you're going to get some people offended. Because you're going to have people dressing like Mexicans, like that idiot, forgot what it was, they all dressed as Mexicans, or company, or people coming in blackface, or dressing as rabbis, whatever it may be. You're going to have people who are going to get pissed off, upset, and hurt, no question about it. But is it worth it in the end? Is what you gain first by exposing people, and as Jesse put it, also being able to teach some people. Is it worth offending?
Unfortunately, I won't be able to give you like a really good answer because I would have to like form my thoughts. But To Jess's point, I could say that I'm not sure because I think what Dean G said as his closing statement pretty much summed up my argument as well as his. I can assume that far. By saying that the university wasn't necessarily trying to prescribe actions, they were telling students to be more mindful, if students were to go as far as this, and if the university wasn't to have sent that, which to be honest, if the black students hadn't asked for it, I don't know if they would have. But to say that, okay, well, people can dress how they want, and if they're trying to be hardly offensive, then they're going to do it regardless. And if someone's doing it because they just think it's a trend or it's cool, then this is a learning opportunity for them. I don't know, because then you get into my perspective. I would say that, is it worth my trauma or my emotional or mental stability for you to walk around in blackface? And then how am I supposed to deal with that? But
right.
you just walked around.
Well,
am I supposed to contain myself when you've obviously taken the action to offend me? And if the person who hasn't seen it, then blackface is offensive.
Yeah.
Where did it come from?
Well, I definitely know. I'm not disagreeing with the email, because I understand because that email could reach the people who are kind of clueless and just think it's just fun and games. But at the same time, I'm not saying that we should because I understand that it is traumatic for people, because it's dealing with emotions that you deal with all your life. Someone calling you the N-word is obviously clearly offensive, and seeing someone in blackface will be offensive. And the only thing is that if you don't know that these people are like this in the way of something,
but we do.
But no, I'm just saying as something small, I'm trying to put this in a way where it makes more sense. So if someone's clearly racist, but they're suppressed, so they're not clearly saying it to you, you don't clearly know that they are racist. I mean, it can lead to different things where I'm trying to think. All right, so let's say Black Lives Matter protests. It could lead to those threats online that says, "Oh, I'm going to come and shoot all the black people doing a Black Lives Matter protest," and you would never have known this person was like this, and you wouldn't know because they could just walk up to you and it was something bad could happen because you didn't know that this person was blatantly racist. So I'm saying it does suck that it does end up hurting other people, but at the same time, suppressing them suppresses everything else.
If I might just interject less than a minute, I think, Dean, the framework that you have established has this speech or action create a hostile environment in the learning place? Yes. And that's where I, as Dean of Students and others like me, would enter that conversation. So you have the First Amendment, you have the right to be a racist. You have the right to think and feel whatever you want. If you act it out at the expense of another citizen in some violent way or some offensive way, or where are all those lines? But an educational institution, and I think this is what Yale was trying to say, has the responsibility to create a positive learning environment for all students. Without conflict? No. Without controversy? No. But where are the lines? And I think they were saying, just be mindful, as I said before, because these particular acts, which you think are funny or innocent, are really offensive to the point where a student can't study freely and positively, as we promise in our contract with students, to return to the issue of what are the obligations of universities to their students.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to wrap up simply by going off of what Dean G has said. Schools have a right to make sure that their educational environments are conducted for all students to learn. However, if we make these educational environments too constricting, we are not preparing our students for the real world, which is what we're supposed to be preparing them for. If we don't do that, they won't know how to, address these issues that you have both presented in a way that people in the outside of this great biome that we've created